Today I'm going to be checking out this review by the Ackman on Space Marine 2. Now Space Marine 2 is a game that I absolutely love. I have about 100 hours by now. I actually enjoyed the game so much that I'm currently working on a review of it myself. But in the meantime, I do want to know what Ackman's takes are on this game, so I want to give my opinion about it through this reaction video. But of course, before we begin, as always, please make sure to go support the OG video. Link to that is always at the top of the description.
Make no mistake. War is coming. With all its glory. And all its horror. Mr. Findley, your freedom awaits.
Hell, it's about time.
Incredible thumbnail.
Guns, muscles, killing. Sometimes that's all it takes.
Gears of War. Now, I don't know anything about Gears of War at all. I didn't own an Xbox back in the day. And I've only ever heard whenever I watched other people play through the game that for those who have played Gears of War, they compare it to that. And I think Gears of War is like heavily inspired by Warhammer 40k. Again, you can see a lot of similarities there as well. I love to learn about video game lore here on the channel. And I'm not sure if Gears of War has like any interesting lore to dive into, or if it's just like a third-person shooter with a bit of backstory to it. But I don't know. Maybe in the future, someday.
To satisfy the monkey brain that resides in the skulls of all men. Deep down, we crave combat. We yearn for war. Hammer. And that's why we create and play war games, so men can satiate their inner bloodlust in a healthy way. Civilization doesn't really value violence the same way it used to, and we don't really have any
Troy was a good
safe
movie.
outlets to satisfy these cravings. And that's where Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 comes in. It's a game that blends the most masculine traits of our favorite video game franchises into one. It combines the glory kills and intensity of Doom with the strength and toughness of Gears of War. Of course, Warhammer predates both of those franchises, so, you know, respect your elders. But these games serve as relevant examples that gamers unfamiliar with Warhammer can easily relate to and get an understanding of what Space Marine 2 is all about. And this
Yeah, for sure.
is what it's all about.
I think Space Marine 2 is such a good gateway into the Warhammer 40k lore, because even if you know absolutely nothing about Warhammer 40k, you can still enjoy the game. And because of how the game is designed, and plus the environments and the way people are talking to each other, I think the story itself, as well as the interactions between characters, is enough to be intriguing to people to make them want to learn more. When you're playing the game, you really do feel like you're in the 40k universe. And it's honestly everything that I hoped that it would be ever since I finished playing Space Marine 1 and I knew that the second game was coming out. I know that there are some things that even I would personally criticize about the game, but overall, I'm very happy with the product. And I really, really wish it was maybe a little bit cheaper. I'll have to wait for a sale because I do want my friends to pick it up and I can just introduce them to the 40k lore with that game.
This is amazing! I feel incredible! Yes, 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 yes! I can win! I feel great! I can do this!
It's all me. I did all of this. All me. All me. I'm the best. Playing Space Marine 2, I was thrown back in time to the days of the OG Xbox and 360. This type of game has become a rarity in the era of modern gaming.
Not again. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. I was actually quite amazed at the monetization for Space Marine. Like, yeah, it's a pretty hefty initial price tag, but there aren't any microtransactions for unlocking like most of the Space Marine chapters that are currently in the game. I think there is some that are locked behind like a season pass. And I felt a little bit iffy on the like pre-order in order to play the game 3 days ahead of time thing. But apart from that, it's not like a live service system where you have a bunch of daily missions that you have to complete, an infinite amount of grind, or really like any annoying systems that would hinder progression or give you a problem in order to sell you a solution. For the most part, it's one of those games where you can just pick up, play, and then put down whenever you're bored with it. And I am so glad that that's the type of game that it is.
It reminds me of Republic Commando, a shooter with a relative
Oh, bro. I gotta play Republic Commando. I do have it in my Steam library, and I've been planning to stream it someday, but just haven't had the time. I've only heard good things about it.
relatively simple concept, created more in service of its fan base than anything else. These titles explore a specific era of an existing universe and add immense depth to it, depth that may not have been there before. Space Marine 2 and Republic Commando are games that respect your time. You can play them over the weekend, beat them, and say, man, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah, best way to put it. Games that respect your time. Impossible to find nowadays because they always want their player numbers to be super high, rather than sell you just a complete and fun product.
Didn't need to be anything more than what it was. And I miss that. And they included wacky multiplayers that weren't trying to be the next esports juggernaut. Space Marine 2 makes no attempt to please or appeal to a broader audience. Instead, it appeals to the audience that's already there. What a concept. More importantly, Space Marine 2 stays true to the original. And that's remarkable given the 13-year gap between the first and the second. The word
Bro, it was torture waiting for the second game, but I didn't even play Space Marine 1 on release. I played it after the second game was announced. I can't imagine how it felt for you guys who were like 40k fans for the longest time and had played Space Marine 1, waiting for this game. Actually, when I was talking to the people of the Discord, I think somebody mentioned that like Space Marine 2 wasn't even supposed to happen. Something to do with like the studio or something. But regardless, I'm glad that it did happen, and I'm glad that it's awesome.
word that comes to my mind is pure. Space Marine 2 is a pure game. In the sense that you pay for it, it's complete, and there's no bullshit. It's an experience with a clear focus and a refined goal. And if you want to play something that's going to put some hair on your chest, this is the game for you. Now, I always try to take an analytical approach with my game reviews, but let's face it, fellas, sometimes that's exhausting. I don't always want to have to analyze game mechanics and explain why it's awesome, or talk about the narrative on a deeper level. Why can't I just point at the cool shit and be like, that's cool? It's like, are you always in the mood to solve a Rubik's Cube? No. Chainsaw on sword, neuron activation. But there's something refreshing about the simple pleasures in Space Marine 2.
I will continue to say this over and over again. For those of you guys who watch my Guilty Gear lore reactions with Serby, you'll likely have heard me say this many times, but I will always appreciate games that are unapologetically awesome. They're not afraid to be fun, they're not afraid to be cool, they're not afraid to be over the top. They know that this is what their fan base wants, and this is what they get. I would certainly say that Space Marine 2 falls into that category.
Oh yeah, oh, that was pretty fucking sick. I think the recent failure of Concord and many other live service titles has served as a constant warning to developers and publishers that, hey, you don't always have to spend $400 million to make money. You can make smaller games with a lower...
Yeah, okay, I understand the push for live service, because when live service works, it basically becomes like an infinite money machine, and it can make you much more than your investment, although the initial investment is super high. But that's the thing, right? You're competing with all the other current live service games that are already out there in the market, and if you don't have something new to offer, then nobody's going to pick your game. Therefore, you're going to end up with something like Concord, where you toss a bunch of money into the fire and nothing comes out of it. And honestly, I think there's a lot of audience fatigue as well when it comes to live service games. We've had a ton of them, and we've had a lot of them, and we've been playing them for a long time. And it's just never-ending content over and over and over again, with daily missions and weekly missions and just absurd things and an absurd amount of grind that you have to go through in order to achieve what you want to get the cosmetic that you're looking for. I don't know. It's not really me. Maybe back when I was a kid and I had like a ton of free time on my hands, I would be okay with playing a game like that more. Nowadays, not so much. Which is why it just makes me really appreciate these games, where it's just a one and done experience. You have a campaign, you finish the campaign, and you also have these bonus modes that you could play. But if you don't want to, that's fine. Just wait for more content in the future. Or, you know, the next game that actually has a bunch of more new systems and a completely different story for you to experience.
Lower budget, less people working on them, a more tight-knit team. So much of the AAA developers and publishers feel like they're trying to make every game become the next Overwatch, the next Fortnite, when they should just be trying to make the next fun video game.
We really are the Space Marines too, huh?
So that's it, huh? Be some kind of space
Space Marine 2.
Space Marine 2 may be part of the massive Warhammer 40k universe and one of countless games, but there really are no barriers to entry. Anyone who's a fan of third-person shooters should play this game. It's not—
Oh yes, 1000%. I can say that I dislike this type of game. I do not enjoy real-time action games. I don't enjoy shooter games. I've always been a turn-based strategy game player. I play stuff like XCOM, like Fire Emblem. I can even throw Unicorn Overlord in there. This was not my type of game at all, and I was afraid that I wouldn't enjoy it, but I am kind of hooked on it. I have had 100 hours of pure fun in this game, and I am sure that I'm going to have plenty more in the future. It just feels so good to play, especially once you understand the flow of combat. You really genuinely feel like a Space Marine in the 40k universe, just sweeping through your flows on the battlefield.
not trying to be one of those live service titles that expects you to make playing it your second job. And I respect that. Trying to understand the lore of 40k, now that's a second job. Who's the—
How many videos do I have of me just learning about 40k lore? Well, I learned about fantasy lore as well, and compare the two. Probably a bit more in fantasy, but I'm sure I've surpassed over 100 videos now here on the channel. It's insane how much lore it has to offer, but that also means that you have so much to dive into and learn about. For me, that's exciting. And I feel like a lot of people who are outside of the 40k loop kind of have this incorrect image of what Warhammer is. Because a lot of people kind of even dislike just the mention of Warhammer. Very likely due to the extremely vocal minority of toxic fans. Which is kind of funny because literally every fandom that exists always has that one small toxic minority who unfortunately become very vocal and end up being the stereotypical like representation of that fandom. There's actually a lot to learn and a lot of people who are willing to tell you all about this thing that they're super passionate about. I love learning more about 40k and I love seeing other people learn more about 40k. So I mean, if you're watching this reaction video and you're not very familiar with the lore, I highly suggest you check it out. It's really cool.
of the Warhammer 40k universe?
Everyone.
Everyone.
Yes. Everyone.
I'm learning so much about the lore. Space Marine 2 is a sequel to the original hack and slash game from 2011, and it takes place in the grim, dark Warhammer 40k universe. You play as Johnny Space Marine. Hi, I'm
Basically.
Jonathan Heresy, and welcome to Jackass. On a
Dead.
quest to prove he is not a traitor or a heretic in the eyes of Sigmar, as you travel from planet to planet,
Sigmar.
annihilating any aliens you encounter. Now, this is the third Warhammer game I've played, and
Well, for those of you not in the know, that's a Warhammer Fantasy. A little bit different. Not gonna lie though, whenever I'm charging through the battlefield and raising my Warhammer, I do want to shout out Sigmar's name sometimes.
I only have the faintest idea of what's happening in this universe, and that's fine. I know
Yeah.
nothing of the lore. All I know is I must kill, and good soldiers follow
That's
orders.
all you need to know.
Between this and Helldivers, I've really been enjoying the whole vibe of becoming a killing machine with unquestionable loyalty to this thing or concept you only vaguely understand. The Emperor, I don't even know his name, but I will kill for him.
That's basically every human being that exists in 40k. And if you don't think that way, the Inquisition's gonna find you.
Commendable about Space Marine 2 is that you don't need to be an expert in 40k lore in order to get it. Of course, lore supremacists will be able to appreciate the setting, environment, art direction, and narrative on a level that casual gamers won't, but you're not locked out from enjoying what Space Marine 2 has to offer.
For
Regardless,
sure.
I'm sure if I get something incorrect, the hardcore 40k fans will mercilessly fact check me in the comments. So anyway,
I very much understand that feeling. Whenever I like forget about a bit of lore here or there, and then I say something incorrect, you could expect there to be like 20 or 30 like essay-long comments about how I'm wrong or like what I forgot about. And personally, I don't really take any offense to those. Sometimes I do save a few of them and meme on it, not gonna lie. But I have learned a lot of lore from the comment section. All I'm gonna say to all those people who type those kind of comments, I would suggest maybe trying to look out for how you're saying something, you know? A lot of the time, I feel like some commenters come off as condescending, which isn't so great when somebody who's completely new to the lore is just trying to get into it, you know? Can be a little bit intimidating. I assure you, though, that's not the majority of people.
Space Marine 2 is a huge ripoff of StarCraft, which released in 1977
Yeah,
for
sure.
the Atari Wii. Warhammer was actually created as a spin-off to StarCraft, but then became its own franchise, and the similarities are pretty obvious. You even fight Zerglings and Hydralisks. I mean, how much more obvious could it be? It's shameless.
Oh man. I'm sure Ackman is gonna reveal his deception here in a second, but it's really funny if anybody believes this.
It's really okay, I'm done. So it's
Yeah.
Space Marine 2, you play as Jim Raynor. Forgive me. Like I said, Warhammer is a franchise with a very long storied history and a massive dedicated fan base. And one of the more impressive things about Space Marine 2 is when you compare the factions, the armor to some of the figurines. From what I'm seeing, this is basically a perfect adaptation of the art and style of the 40K universe. We've
Yeah.
seen how fan bases react when the armor design is not up to snuff or is not accurate to the franchise. But there's something very
Poor Halo fans. I will join you guys soon. I'm still learning about the lore and still trying to find some time to set up a co-op campaign with Kiwi. But eventually, we'll play through all the Halo games.
masculine about a game that doesn't ask much of your brain, just your reflexes, your instincts, and your propensity for violence. Space Marine 2 is able to establish the interesting universe of 40K and immerse you within the setting without resorting to shoveling pages and pages
Yes.
of exposition and lore dumps down your throat.
You do not need to know any of this, any of the wiki pages or any of the books. All you need to be doing in Space Marine 2 is just following the story and then kill whatever needs to be killed. Maybe shout for the Emperor at some point during your campaign.
Probably could have benefited with some type of in-game codex system, but regardless, in my Gears of War
That is true. Something I do wish the game had was a system where if you hovered your cursor over a keyword, that there would be like a little tooltip explaining exactly what that was. There are a lot of systems in the game that are ripped directly from the tabletop, and tabletop players will understand what this particular keyword means. People who have not played the tabletop or are just straight up not familiar with 40K though, might struggle a bit there. You'll get it eventually, just from like trying it out, but having that extra clarity would be really nice. I guess I'll extend this comment to Darktide as well. I've had some issues trying to understand exactly what they mean in Darktide because they also don't have the system.
review, I talked about how the game has weight in its scale, in the sounds of the footsteps, in the executions, and all of that is true for Space Marine as well, but it's somehow been amped up. You could substitute Space Marine 2's soundtrack with that of Gears of War, and it would fit perfectly. Because I felt these similarities to Gears of War, one of my first questions was, how do I take cover? To which someone in chat responded,
Nobody
brother,
takes
you
cover.
are the cover. Space Marines don't crouch, eh? Crouching is cowardice. No cover, no crouch. Brother, you are the cover. And I couldn't have said it better myself. And that really goes to show that Space Marine 2 is somehow a step up in manliness from Gears of War, because cover is for pussies. And after saying that, Gears
Yep. That's the whole Space Marine thing. Because, like, there are so many obstacles that you have to get rid of in game, which are kind of like just the small gateways to separate areas. But a lot of them, it looks like you could easily just go around or jump over, but no, that's not manly. You gotta, like, kick it down or, like, lift up the super heavy thing and just push it around. Any other way is literal heresy.
Gears of War fans watching this are scrambling to find meaning in their life.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, man.
You can dodge and roll, but you're not hiding from your enemies. The act of
No.
hiding from your enemies is cowardly. And I think that speaks volumes about the culture of the Terran society, of the Ultramarine society. You're wearing this gargantuan armor and you're 10 feet tall for a reason. Within
Yeah.
the context of the 40K universe, it makes sense that the Space Marines don't take cover, and the game isn't trying to replicate Gears of War. But within the context of a video game, it does feel like maybe there's something missing, some crucial aspect of strategy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means you're always in the thick of combat. You don't have to think through many encounters or plan your movements. There's not many branching paths. and you don't strategize much of anything, and maybe that's the point. You're a fucking Space Marine. These guys are comically huge compared to even Gears of War characters.
Okay, while I do agree with this comment, there are certain areas where I feel like it's not completely true. Like, say, when I'm playing an operations mission on Ruthless, I'm playing it with the Discord peeps, there will be times where we intentionally say, you know what, we're going to wait here and wait for the next wave to come in, because this is a more advantageous area to fight in. Or like, say, there might be an ammo box nearby, therefore this would be the better place to fight them in. There might be certain sections of the map where we know we don't want to be fighting a wave in because there's like narrow hallways, and if they have AoE attacks, it's not going to be easy to dodge it, or it's going to be impossible to dodge those kind of attacks. I guess another one I can toss into the pile is like, oh, do we actually fight this wave, this extremist, or this terminus level enemy, which is like a mini boss enemy? Or do we just try to run past it and get to the next checkpoint to despawn the enemy? Will you survive getting to the next checkpoint? Just some things you have to consider. Ultimately, combat is certainly more about reaction and positioning and selecting the right targets out of the massive horde of enemies that are going to be coming towards you.
And yet it doesn't feel like it's overtly cartoony. Space Marines are built tough, Ford tough. Their foes tremble at the sound of their footsteps. These badass motherfuckers are so strong, you don't even have to shoot certain enemies to kill them. Just run into them like A-Train, and they're dead. It illustrates what an unstoppable...
Oh man, I remember everybody in chat constantly reminding me that I could run to the human enemies. Guys, I know. There are just some times where it's better to like take out your secondary and hit them from a distance, because these small guys, they don't really do much damage, but the ones that have like material sniper rifles can get rid of your armor and can chunk you. So this is certainly a little situational, but it's also really funny to just run into them.
Unstoppable force you are meant to be, and you truly feel like that. It's like these guys aren't even worth looking at, let alone wasting ammo on. From my understanding, Space Marines are like the Navy SEALs of Warhammer. You call these guys in when shit hits the fan. Some view them as angels, but they don't bring salvation. They bring punishment. And if they come to your planet, chances are you're fucked.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, as a guardsman, if you see Space Marines land, you can either be like, oh, thank goodness the Emperor has sent his soldiers to help us. Or, oh no, the Emperor has sent his soldiers to punish us. It can really go either way. For the people of the Imperium of Man, though, being a Space Marine, or even being recruited into becoming a Space Marine, is like a massive honor. If you play the game, you can very clearly feel this with just how all the guardsmen react to you. Of course, there are some other factions that don't really respect you as much, like the Adeptus Mechanicus, but that's a whole nother thing.
Someone like me can infer about the Warhammer universe and the Space Marines and the culture without knowing it myself. Space Marine 2 is a co-op third-person shooter. You play as Titus, and two of your friends can play as Gadriel and Chiron. This is one of those games where you can play solo, but you'll get a lot more out of it if two of your friends join in on the mayhem.
Very. I feel like there is one particular section of the campaign that would be so much better, and I feel like it's intentionally designed to be played with multiple people. I did finish the entire campaign solo, and we were able to get through it, but it's always more fun if you got some friends to play with.
So I have 4 studs, so I'm a 4-star general of basedness. I'm a 4-star Chad.
He only has one, so he's a bit of a soy boy.
Co-op shooters are typically either...
Well, for anybody who is wondering about that, I believe each stud signals 100 years of service. So Titus has been in service for 400 years. For you 40k lore nerds out there, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments.
2 or 4 player, never 3. That's an interesting choice in and of itself, and it separates Space Marine 2 from a lot of other co-op shooters. Teamwork is not all that important or emphasized in the campaign. Rarely do you have to communicate with your buddies about tackling certain objectives or holding down certain sight lines and positions. It's not like...
In the campaign, probably not. In operations, there are some maps that require it. Like, there is a particular mission where the elevator might get stuck, and so you have to activate 2 switches that are on the opposite side from each other. Or another one where you have to take a payload all the way downtown, and somebody has to be on top of the station in order to rotate the tracks so that they're going the right direction, and other people have to be near the payload in order to push it. In the campaign, though, I think the main objective for everybody on your team is to just survive and make sure that the objective doesn't get destroyed or whatever.
Like Left 4 Dead or Vermintide, where some enemies can incapacitate you and it requires a teammate to help out. So it's a much more casual...
It's not that type of gameplay. If you're looking for it and you're looking for it in 40k, I would highly recommend Darktide. I've also been having a lot of fun playing that as well. Space Marine 2 is not that.
Approach to co-op shooters, and I like that simplicity. That said, the lack of teamwork does feel like a missed opportunity. Space Marine 2 is a simple but delicious recipe of hack and slash and third-person shooter. Like I said...
Still thinking about what Ackman said there. Missed opportunity when it comes to the campaign, I suppose. I think they kind of had to design it in a way where people could play it solo and not be frustrated because the AI just wasn't doing the objectives or helping them. I think one of the design philosophies for the team was to make sure that it was always the player who was doing all the cool stuff. But because of that, it made a lot of objectives a lot more difficult to achieve because the AI companions wouldn't, you know, do anything at all. They changed that a little bit, but I feel like it has improved. It's not perfectly there just yet. I don't even think there's a way to order your AI companions to do things. And as I said, there was one particular mission in the campaign where I definitely feel like it's something you need to tackle with multiple people, and because I played it solo, I kind of suffered, and I hate that section so much. You guys who played the game or watch the streams know exactly what I'm talking about. So if every single part of the campaign was like that, I would not have enjoyed it as much.
There's not much thought or strategy to the game, and that's fine. Sometimes I want to turn my brain off and just enjoy mindless action, or watch the first Transformers movie, which is the only good Transformers movie.
Yeah.
I played the game on Veteran, and in my 8-hour playthrough, I never felt frustrated. So the difficulty was perfect, whether I was playing with bots or buddies. It's been 13 years since...
I'm going to assume the balance patch that he was talking about was the one where when you parried the Minoris enemies, you get 1 armor back, and when they attack you, it doesn't completely remove an armor segment. Back before that patch went live, combat was insane. Like, melee combat was almost unfeasible when there was a massive horde. And for the most part, you were always just fighting to keep your contested health up. And the freaking Zangors, man. For those of you guys who played before the patch, you know what I'm talking about. Those chaos enemies are, like, overpowered. And in lore, the Zangors are kind of supposed to be chaff units, but before the balance patch, they were the menace. I didn't really care about the Rubik Marines. It was those Zangors that really messed me up.
Since the original, and yet when you look at the gameplay side by side, Space Marine 2 looks like a true sequel. And I guess that's why it feels like such a throwback to a different era of gaming. The missions are very linear, and like Gears of War, Space Marine 2 follows what I like to call the amusement park formula. There's plenty of thrilling rides, set pieces, memorable moments that will provide some pure entertainment, but they're going to be about the same each time you go on the ride.
That moment when you picked up the banner was incredible. Obviously, as Ackman said, it was pretty short, but I think there is something to that when it comes to these type of games, where if they overstay their welcome, instead of being like pure dopamine and pure joy, they end up becoming a little bit boring. And I don't want it to be that at all. I'm fine with it being short and sweet. And I wholeheartedly agree. There is a lot that you can say about Space Marine 2, but the one thing that everybody can agree on is that it is a visual spectacle. It looks like that, and it feels like that when you're playing.
So you may not come back to the amusement park day after day, but maybe a few years from now you'll come back and everything will feel fresh again. Space Marine 2 has some incredible art direction.
Only in Warhammer would you have a construction crane shaped like a skull.
Yep.
Works.
That is shaped like a skull. Wow. And in those moments between the intense visceral combat, you're treated to some fantastic skyboxes and set pieces.
Yes.
This is an insane backdrop. Look at this.
Yeah.
Look at
Oh
this.
yeah.
Glorious.
Swarms.
Beautifully terrifying.
I almost don't want to kill anything. I don't even know where I am half the time, but there's a giant bird who can slow time, and we got a bunch of tanks and soldiers, and let's
Oh, this
fucking
is
go.
so
Let's go to
cool.
war. We're going to
Oh, I think somebody, I forget which comment section it was, but apparently in this one scene, there are exactly enough models to be legally playable on the tabletop, which was a nice added touch if that is true.
Where's that big thing up there? See that? We're gonna shoot it.
Oh yeah, brother.
Fucking kill.
Despite Space Marine 2 coming across as just a big, dumb, loud video game, clearly a lot of effort went into the artistry behind it.
Oh, this moment.
Just walks up and steps on the
Oh my god. Oh my god. Holy shit.
yeah.
My guy Valerius, man. What a G. Serving the Emperor even after death.
I love Davey's awesome.
It's hard to do my typical review with a game like this because if I pointed out everything that's awesome, I'd just be saying, damn, that's cool. Wow, this is gorgeous and beautiful. And how many times can I say that, you know? One of my favorite parts happens near the end where you fought these tougher enemies, the Hell Brutes, and you're walking through this tunnel when all of a sudden...
This moment.
Look, the boys here. Our backup's here.
The real main character.
Wow. I don't know, man. They're everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah, let's go get them.
Murder the biggest thing in the game and just turn to you and like, where's more?
Lead me to the slaughter.
Jesus. The game has a decent variety
Some
of
of the best
primary and
lines.
secondary firearms, as well as melee weapons. There are some basic combos that are different for each melee weapon, but nothing too crazy. And that's fine, because I'm not here to play Soul Calibur. I'm here to smash things with a fucking Warhammer. You can seamlessly switch between third-person shooting and hack-and-slash melee combat. There is a parry and blocking system. Sometimes enemies will lunge at you from afar and Titus can grab their bitch ass, slam them into the ground, or kill them in any number of ways. Timing is pretty generous, and this game plays great on controller. It's really easy to pick up and play. And these
Well, I will say that on release, it did not do well tracking my controller. I could not get it to work, so I just played mouse and keyboard, which didn't really feel right. You kind of have to switch around the key bindings until it reaches a place where you're okay with it. At the moment, though, it just feels so smooth to play. Probably because I've gotten used to the controls, but yeah. I'm not sure if Ackman's going to get into the weapons here, because that seemed like a pretty short overview. But what I will say is that there are some weapons that just don't feel great to use. Well, not as great as others. After the patch, the plasma weapons have felt a lot better, and the melta weapons, which are like the best in the game, are somewhat still really good, but not broken good. I am kind of confused though as to like what the thought process behind the block weapons versus the finesse or parry weapons were. Because like, why in the world would you take a block weapon? It gives you more damage, maybe, sure, but the most of the game is about parrying damage away from you. And parry gives you advantage, whereas block just makes sure you don't lose health. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not gonna rant about it for too long. I have a lot to say about it, but maybe for a different video.
Glory kills really highlight how badass the Space Marines are. Fast, brutal, efficient. You could tell a lot of time was spent animating these glory kills to give players a real sense of pride and accomplishment when defeating bosses. Most games can't handle this many things on screen, and I rarely noticed any frame dips or technical issues. A horde mode in this game would go pretty fucking hard. And would you look at that, they already have one planned for a future update. It's like they know how to make a fun video game. These moments where you're holding out against wave after wave of Tyranids are some of my favorites. It reminds me of those wall defense sections from Armed and Dangerous. If anybody still remembers that game.
I don't know that game at all.
Back to the Battle Barge, the game's hub world, and although it's basic, there's a lot of environmental storytelling that lore fanatics will greatly appreciate and notice. Now, because the combat is so simple and straightforward, this kind of game would start to get boring and monotonous if it lasted too long. And while it does get slightly repetitive near the end, the mechanics never lose their gimmicky appeal. With games like this that lean so heavily into the spectacle, you can lose the magic if it goes on for too long. I might be done playing Space Marine 2 for now, but the idea of new factions being introduced means that I'll likely come back at some point. In a video game industry where so much is expected of every new release, when leadership constantly interferes with the creative process, it's refreshing that a game like Space Marine 2 can come out and be successful. It's a testament to the beauty in simplicity. The campaign is an amusement park filled with rides that will get your heart pumping and make you feel alive. While most modern titles emphasize PvP to keep players coming back for more, Space Marine 2 is doing what Overwatch should have done.
Ooh, actually true. I was going to get into Overwatch 2 because of the PvE campaign stories, missions, and whatnot. Because I'm just not interested in PvP. Like, that's not my thing. I played 100 hours of Space Marine, and I haven't touched the PvP at all, because, yeah, why would I? I mean, it's certainly a facet that I could dive into later at some point if I really wanted to, but the PvE operations are so good, and there's a ton of replayability to them, even if the objectives are the same. There's going to be a little bit of an RNG factor to them when it comes to the enemies that you face off against, or the location of certain items, or the amounts of objectives they have to complete. I haven't gotten bored with a single one of them yet, and that is pretty incredible.
Prioritizing PvE? Nature is healing. The operations are the dessert after the main course. And it's where the game opens up in ways I wish the campaign did.
Oh, I should also add, I think it was a great idea to have the operations kind of mirror the story, because during the campaign, you will be sending off other squads as well onto different missions to assist you. And you can get to like reflect back on this moment when you finish an operations campaign. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. That was the moment Titus went to do this and this when I was playing him. And now I get to see the other side of that battle. That's great. That's fantastic. It's such a great idea.
Since there are 6 classes to choose from with different abilities and roles to fill, it adds a small but important layer of strategy. What I don't like is how certain classes don't have access to primary or melee weapons. I feel like that's unnecessary given how limited the sandbox can feel at times. Further restricting your arsenal.
That I can somewhat agree. It would really depend on the balancing of the game, but like heavy not having a melee weapon and just swinging around your heavy weapon feels pretty bad. As well as assault not having a primary, it just makes his early levels really, really bad. I think there needs to be a rework when it comes to the perks, or specifically the weapon perks as well, because a lot of them don't feel very impactful. Others are just straight up too situational to even decide to pick up, but you kind of have to pick them up in order to advance down the tree. Currently, as of recording this video, I have maxed out every single class in operations, and I will say that the worst experience that I had was probably with Assault, just because all of the good stuff that makes Assault really, really fun to play is on like the last possible line, which is near the maximum level, level 25. Up until then, you'll be struggling to do the job that you're supposed to be doing, which I don't think is a great progression system. And depending on the operation that you're playing, there are going to be certain classes that feel almost necessary in order to complete them in a efficient way. But I suppose that kind of mindset also comes from the min-max mindset of playing on highest difficulty currently available. I can't wait till they release the next difficulty. I think it's lethal or something. But I suppose for more casual players playing on like average or veteran or whatever the third difficulty is called, they won't have too much issue completing most operations, playing whatever they want, you know?
It feels like we're not trying hard enough to purge the heretics. There's also a Left 4 Dead 2 type director that makes repeat playthroughs of each operation a little different. You level up each class and weapons separately, and along the way you'll unlock new talents, skills, and upgraded weapons. To be honest, I'm a little disappointed with the rewards. A lot of the bonuses and perks feel superficial, like
yes, 100%.
do 10% more damage with your primary weapon. Stuff like that is not super exciting, doesn't radically change my playstyle, especially as a Vermintide 2 simp, where I've come to really love the progression and customization of that game. Allowing players to unlock better weapons, gear, and armor to tackle increasingly difficult challenges is a great way to add some replayability. And for some, simply unlocking new cosmetics and armor sets, showing them off, that'll likely be enough incentive for people to replay these operations. What's also cool is the PvE is directly tied in with the events of the campaign and the main narrative. For example, at the end, when you have to rotate all the obelisks, Titus and his crew handle one, while another group of Space Marines handles another. So you get to play through the same event from 2 different perspectives.
There are certain events in the campaign that haven't received an operation yet, so that's likely what we're going to be getting in the next patch.
And I wish more games did this. Yeah, imagine playing as an elite in Halo, wouldn't that... Yeah, that was pretty fucking sick, wasn't it? Space Marine 2 also includes...
Oh, wait. Did that actually happen? Oh, that would be so cool. Or wait, maybe that's like the multiplayer mode.
A 6v6 PvP multiplayer with the same classes, weapons, and its own separate progression system. To say this is bare bones would be an insult to the skeletons of all the heretics I killed. Currently, there are 3 maps and 3 modes, bringing new meaning to the phrase starved for content.
Please, sir. I want some more.
What?
The multiplayer is crossplay with PC, which is nice, but you and your friends can't play it together unless you're all on the same platform. So it's not that nice. I would have to play that
I didn't know
solo.
that.
That stinks.
That's balls.
That is quite balls. Like PvE, the classes are meant to fulfill a certain role, but even in multiplayer, there's not much thought or strategy in how you utilize each role's unique abilities.
Yeah, no, there are some classes that I've heard in PvP that are just better, and some that you pick basically just means that you're throwing the match. The PvP, I feel like, does need a lot of work, but that was never really my purpose for playing the game anyways, so I'm okay with it.
Classes feel like they were designed for a PvE experience, so it becomes rather mindless when fighting other players. Shoot the guys, capture the point, rinse and repeat. There's very little.
I suppose it's one of those situations where if you optimize for one thing, you won't get the best out of the other. And just the fact that they have the mode is probably fine, and they don't really need to do too much with it. I'm not sure how they would fix it to make it better, but here's hoping for the PvP enjoyers out there that they do.
Little in the way of creative playmaking outside of the jetpack class, and there's really not much to say about the multiplayer beyond that. Oh, wow.
That was nice.
He just dropped a bomb on me. That's a pretty cool tactic. You might be getting the impression that I think it's trash, but no, it's decent fun. I didn't buy Space Marine 2 expecting a robust multiplayer with a consistent line service business model. I bought it for the campaign, to fuck around with my buddies in PvE. So this severe lack of content isn't a deal breaker, especially since they have a roadmap. I mean, it's disappointing, but in a way, it's kind of satisfying that the multiplayer feels tacked on. And to be fair, it's not like Space Marine 2 is some staple franchise with an extensive checklist of features, game modes, and content that hardcore fans expect at release.
Oh, no, not at all. Like, we've gotten so much more than what we had in Space Marine 1. And with the very clear roadmap that they laid out, we have clear expectations of what they want to achieve. Honestly, I'm just glad the game exists.
This isn't Halo or Call of Duty, Gears of War, or Doom. This is a sequel to a cult classic from 2011. I'm just happy they made it at all. So I can give Saber Interactive a pass on this since I didn't really have any expectations. Now there is a $40 Seasons Pass. Now that's a phrase that triggers me. It takes me right back to 2017. But luckily, the Seasons Pass only contains cosmetic content. Speaking of, the armor customization is surprisingly fleshed out. Warhammer has a ton of different factions, armor sets, and creative designs that they can pull inspiration from and monetize the game beyond its initial asking price. You can even customize like 8 different pieces of armor and mix and match as you unlock them. You can even save presets to swap out your drip with ease. Wow, it's like you don't even need to separate and lock out armor sets and pieces based on some like stupid core system. You mean I can just buy the armor and wear it and look cool?
Yep.
I'd forgotten how simple things used to be. Space Marine 2's multiplayer isn't something I'm going to spend that
Modern
much time
gaming
on, given how basic it is on a fundamental level, but who knows what it might become a year or two down the line. Vermintide 2 has had consistent support for like 7 years. That game has so much content, I'm still playing it to this day. And there's a chance Space Marine 2 could achieve that same type of longevity. In conclusion, the 40K franchise is massive beyond reason. And there are so many different games it can be hard to decide which one to play. But Space Marine 2 stands out amongst the list of 40K video game entries. It provides a familiar, comforting feeling for gamers like me who grew up in the 90s when priorities were different. But even if you aren't a withered, aging husk like myself, it's still a fucking badass macho game on par with Gears of War and Doom. In fact, you can even see how Gears of War may have been inspired by Warhammer. So if you're somebody who's looking for a gritty, macho game that'll take you back to the days of the Xbox 360, look no further than Space Marine 2. It doesn't get better than this. The game has a few shortcomings, and I wouldn't consider it Game of the Year material, but that doesn't change how much fun I had with my 15 hours in it.
Exactly. Completely 1000% agree. There are shortcomings, there are things that I'm kind of annoyed at. I wish they would change it in a later patch, but it doesn't ruin the fun that I've had so far. And I'm sure even if these things don't really get fixed, I'll still continue to have fun with the game regardless.
At a time when video games feel needlessly complicated, Space Marine 2 thrives on its simplicity. It's like a roller coaster, man. You don't need to think, just sit back and enjoy the ride. And that is why Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is so awesome.
Honestly, fantastic review yet again from the Act Man. I pretty much basically agreed with everything that he said here. And if you haven't played Space Marine 2 yet, I highly recommend you try it out. It's just so insanely fun, and I can't wait to see what future content the game has to offer. But anyways, that's gonna be it from me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.